All right, what's going on, Giants fans? Breaking down the trade the New York Giants made. We've talked about them adding depth. Could they trade one of their picks? Well, the writing was on the wall. B.J. Hill was the only healthy player to play 0 snaps in the preseason game last night, and the Giants have traded B.J. Hill for Bengals interior offensive lineman, former first-round pick Billy Price, plus a conditional 7th. Haven't gotten the info on what the 7th is, but nonetheless, Jordan reported that this trade went down, and it went down. So I'm going to go through who Price is as a player. I watched some of his preseason games and then his lone start of 2020. But again, he was a first-round pick out of Ohio State in 2018. And he's had injury issues. Like he tore his pec at the combine, but then he got back for the season, had a foot injury, so he started 10 games that year. And then 8 the following year in 2019 where he battled plantar fasciitis and a back injury. So, he started in 18 games his first 2 seasons. And then in 2020, he only started 1 game, and it was in relief. Like he was healthy and good to go for all 2020, but they just had him as a backup, which isn't a good look for someone that was a third-year guy, a first-round pick for a team that had a bad as offensive line as the Bengals. But let's go through him as a player. I watched him, and this was in the draft profile too. And I went and looked at the draft profile after I watched him to see if it matched my eyes. And he's got really good strength. Like he is very strong. He routinely pancakes dudes in gets to the second level and he's able to latch on the guys. Like he moves guys in the run game, and I think him being put in the Giants' gap scheme is a good fit for him. Like he really does fit that gap scheme. He's better when he's faced up, head up. In pass pro, you put him against the stronger defensive tackles, he's going to be able to stand up with them. Like you're never going to see him just get bull rushed, right down the gut. Like he's gonna be able to play in that. As far as depth, now, because I don't see him being the starter unless Shane Lemieux is out, obviously. But as depth, he has the best profile of an offensive lineman with his strength, his athleticism. He doesn't have amazing athleticism, but it's better than Nate Solder or Kenny Wiggins or Ted Larson. Harrison's a pretty good athlete too. Negatives in the pass pro, he lunges like crazy. He leans forward and his feet get stuck and he gets swam. He gets ripped through and he struggles with that half-man relationship where guys just get past him. So he was bad in pass. If you want me to judge him as a whole, he is a bad pass blocker. And when he was playing center, he started 1 game. He was really bad at picking up the blitz, identifying things. And that's where I think he fits probably better as the backup guard and you leave Jonathan Harrison as the center because he was really bad in that stuff. And again, in the past, he lunges like crazy and he has bad reps. I watched his, sorry for shaking the camera. I watched his 1 start and it was worse than any start Nick Gates had all of 2020. And it was Nick Gates' first time ever playing the center position. And Nick Gates' first game was probably the worst one, the Pittsburgh game. And he had one other bad game versus Washington. But he looked worse than Nick Gates. So I don't think this guy's going to come in and battle for a starting spot. Well, maybe he'll battle, but I don't see him unseating Lemieux. The Giants like Lemieux. Negatives in the run game. He can move guys in the run game, but sometimes he'll get shed. He'll get 3-4 yards moving a guy, but he doesn't get to play the full man, doesn't get good hand and helmet placement, and he gets shed on some of those blocks. So that's kind of who he is as a player. Now let's talk about the trade. Now, if you're just looking at it from an optics point, you're not watching film, because I don't expect everybody to be watching our backup interior offensive line film. The Bengals don't have a good O-line. They're the one O-line in the league where you could be they're worse than the Giants. I feel more comfortable at the Giants O-line than I do the Bengals. And go back to when we watched them. Our DNs, Nico Lalos was winning reps consistently versus the Bengals last year. So the fact that they weren't a good offensive lineman, and they had a 2018 first-rounder on the bench. First-rounders get extra chances. We went through it. Eric Flowers was horrible, but he got chance after chance after chance. So that makes you, okay, what do the Bengals know? And B.J. Hill's a solid player, and I'll talk about it from his vantage point later. Money-wise, it adds $150,000 to the cap per over the cap per Research Rick, who's one of our listeners. He's really good with the cap stuff. So B.J. Hill, he broke it down. His salary was $2.18 million, and then he had $250,000 of dead money, and then Price's salary, Price's price. How about that? was 2.07 mil. So, like you said, adds 150K in cap. But I do like the move for the Giants because they desperately needed depth at the interior offensive line, and you're not going to get a stud. We're not going to trade for some stud unless there was some like disgruntled guard that you trade a first-round pick, second-round pick, like a Trent Williams situation, and that just wasn't out there. If it was, I would have been banging on the table to go and do it. And you traded at a position of surplus, which was the defensive line. B.J. Hill was tapped out at 35% of the reps. His reps went down every year from his rookie season, and it's not really an indictment on Hill. It was more Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams are going to play those reps. B.J. Hill's not going to play the nose tackle, so Danny Shelton and Austin Johnson are going to get those reps. And he was just kind of tapped out at that 35% mark. Like I said, his playing time went down every year, and he's on an expiring contract. So are the Giants going to re-sign him? I just don't think they were, or if they were, it was going to be on some like low price. And on the other side, that Raymond Johnson has had a good preseason. The undrafted free agent out of Georgia Southern. We liked him a lot when we did our UDFA review after the draft. So Raymond Johnson can come fill in that role as that 3-technique, 5-technique pass, situational pass rusher. Definitely has, he's not B.J. Hill yet, and I think B.J. Hill's a better finisher. But I do like this move for that sake. But I don't have expectations for Billy Price to come in and have like a resurgence of his career. And I watched his film. Like, you watch his preseason versus Washington, and he did look good. But it was only a few reps. It was against starters, but, he didn't get tested a ton. There wasn't a lot of blitzes or anything like that. And then Brandon Thorne gave Giants fans some optimism, who's like an O-line guy. I love the O-line stuff. I do the O-line breakdowns. Brandon Thorne, he's like the best at that stuff. He tweeted out, "You can tell which people watch Price play at the end of last season, plus the preseason, and those who are going off of grades from 2+ years ago, because his PFF grades suck." And I hate PFF, by the way. I don't use their grades. You'll never see me reference their grades in a take. But I was like, well, what do you mean? He didn't really play this. Like, he played 21 snaps in the second half of the last season. He came in as a reserve. Someone got hurt in the 17th game of the year, and then his one start of the season was in the 8th game. So I was like, what does that mean? And then he mentioned the preseason. I was like, okay, that's fair. And then Brandon Thorne continued on a thread. He said, "Reasonable deal for both sides, especially with Price's recent trajectory heading up. People speak on guys every year as good/bad when it's far more nuanced. Every year, players labeled good/bad become shift the opposite direction. Development is rarely linear. Situations matter." So I agree. Like, hey, Billy Price has the athletic profile. He's a former first-round pick. He could be good. I don't expect it, but he could. And then because we're Giants fans and we need some help on the offensive line, I guess it kind of blew him up. And then he kind of walked it back a little bit. He's like, Giants fans are so hungry for positivity with O-line play that this has already gotten blown out of proportion. I think it's simple. Watch each year of his career plus the improvement at the end of last season / this preseason is evident. That's about the extent of what I'm saying. So I don't think you could look at those Brandon Thorne tweets and be like, okay, this guy's a stud. Because Cincinnati would play him if he was that. But at the end of the day, B.J. Hill was on an expiring contract, was buried on the depth chart behind good players with Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, was never going to play that nose tackle role. You had a young guy in Raymond Johnson, and you seriously need help on the interior offensive line. Ted Larson, Kenny Wiggins, we're not going to cut it. And Ted Larson looked better than Kenny Wiggins, left the game with a knee or some type of injury in the preseason game. So you take a chance at a big-time position of need. I'm fine with it. It's not like you're giving up a 4th-round pick. Like, you give him a 4th-round pick, like, okay, this guy needs to come in and play. I don't know what the conditions are on the 7th. I would love to hold on to it. We'll see how when that news comes out. But appreciate you guys. Subscribe, do all that crap. We're going to have podcasts out later this week. Our player profiles and projections. Check out the podcast recapping the game, all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys. See you next time. Until then, let's go Big Blue.